Welcome to our virtual wild encounter at the Memphis Zoo. My name is Bella, and I am here with my friend Caesar. But before I tell you more about Caesar, let's talk a little bit about why I'm wearing a mask. You may have heard that COVID-19 has become transmittable to other mammals besides humans. So here at the Memphis Zoo, we are doing everything we can to stay safe and healthy and make sure our animals are safe and healthy. So I wear a mask while I'm working, and so do my coworkers, to make sure that we're safe with each other and safe with our animals. Our moderator in the room is also wearing a mask. So I'm actually going to take mine off because I'm about 10 feet away from him, and that way you guys will be able to hear me better. And my friend today is actually not a mammal. He is a scorpion. So he is called an emperor scorpion. So his name is Caesar. He was born and raised here at the Memphis Zoo. He is about 3 years old. So he'll turn 3 on September 14th of this year. And he lives here with his brother Palpatine. They don't live together because they don't really like to live near each other. They're pretty solitary animals, but they do get to see each other through glass. Caesar here, he is a male, and emperor scorpions are one of the largest species of scorpion in the world. A couple of scorpions have measured out larger, but in general their species is the largest, and that's where they get the name emperor scorpion. So he comes from the West African regions in Congo, and all of the hot, humid forests there. So he actually shares a habitat with western lowland gorillas. Unfortunately, there's not enough data on these guys to know whether or not they are endangered or vulnerable or threatened, but we do know that their habitat is being destroyed. The western lowland gorilla is really suffering as well. The best way that you can help those guys out is to recycle your cell phones. So there's a mineral called coltan that is mined in the forests in Africa, and it's the same habitat. It's found in the same habitat that these guys live in, and it's also found in our cell phones. So if we can recycle our cell phones, we can reduce the amount of mining that has to happen in those areas, and that way we save the habitat for these guys and for gorillas. I think we're going to take a couple questions, if there are any coming in. We have Caesar in his travel container right now. This is actually not where he lives. This is just what he travels in. So he lives here at the zoo at our ambassador collection, but we do have multiple other animals on exhibit for you guys to see when you come back to the zoo to see us. But Caesar here lives behind the scenes, and he goes out and teaches people all about scorpions and their role in the environment. These guys are really great at what they do. They are really great at eating other bugs. So they have venom, just like all arachnids, but their venom, and emperor scorpion in particular, is not super potent. So it wouldn't hurt me. It would feel like a bee sting if he did sting me, but he does have really powerful pinchers. So those pinchers are what he uses to grab and crush his prey, and then he eats them kind of like a smoothie, just like a spider would. So these guys are really great to have around. We do have 2 species here in Tennessee, and their venom is not lethal to humans either. So they're really great to keep around to keep down pest species of bugs that we don't necessarily want inside of our houses, like cockroaches.
Got some people coming in on the group now. Abby, age 8, wants to know, what does he eat?
That's a great question, Abby. So here at the zoo, he eats crickets. So he gets crickets every other week. These guys don't need to eat very often once they reach this adult size. So sometimes he doesn't even want to eat his cricket, and he can go about a month without eating and be completely fine.
Sorry, Abby. I know you're 10, not 8. And then Alyssa, age 7, wants to know, is it poisonous?
So that's a good question. He is not poisonous, but he is venomous. So the difference between venom and poison is that venom is injected. So if you think of a scorpion sting or a snake bite, that's going to be venom because they're injecting it into you. But if something is poisonous, you have to eat it for you to get sick. So like a toad might be poisonous because you might pick it up and then you might touch your face with your hands. So he is venomous, but his venom is not going to hurt humans. His venom is mostly just used to take down really small animals like bugs and maybe a small mouse or a lizard. So you can see that he has pretty big pincers at the front of his body, and so that shows us that he probably doesn't have a very potent venom. There are a lot of myths out there about whether the size of a scorpion, like if they're smaller, they're extra venomous, and that's not actually true. There's no real way to tell, but sometimes the size of the pincers can give you a clue. So Caesar here has very big, strong pincers, and that's mostly what he uses when he's doing anything. He would actually be more likely to pinch me than to sting me, and his pinch is pretty powerful, so it could probably do some damage to my finger.
Stacy wants to know, are they colorblind?
Hi Stacy, that's an interesting question. So arachnids see a little bit differently than we do. Scorpions do have 8 eyes. They're kind of on the top of his head, and they're very small. He mostly uses them to sense motion or to sense light versus dark. So we don't really think that they can see in color, but some species of arachnid can see in color, like the jumping spiders that you might see outside. But this animal in general doesn't really need to see color. He just needs to see his prey in front of him.
Sam B wants to know if they can be a pet.
So some people do keep scorpions as pets, but you do have to do a lot of research and make sure that you're handling them very safely, because they do have a sting, and they do have a pretty powerful pincher. So you can find them in pet stores sometimes, but it's probably best to just come and see them at the zoo.
Lily, age 11, wants to know, does he have a favorite keeper?
Ooh, I like that question. I have probably worked the most with Caesar. I'm actually working on doing a little bit of training with him to allow him to choose whether or not he wants to come out on programs. And he definitely could tell the difference between all of us, but I don't know that he has a favorite just yet.
Maddie, age 12, does he glow in the dark?
Hi, Maddie. He does kind of glow in the dark. So if you turned off the lights and shined a black light on him, then he would do something called fluorescence. So he would be kind of a bright blue or green color under a black light. But if you just turn off the light, then he doesn't glow.
Caitlin and Ian want to know, how fast is he and what is his enemy?
Hi, Caitlin and Ian. So he can move really quickly. If he wanted to escape, he's going to just run underneath some sort of wood or maybe some leaf litter. The things that would probably eat him would be some larger rodents, anything that's pretty much bigger than him. Scorpions here would probably be eaten by skunks. So skunks have really thick skin, so the sting doesn't actually bother them. Also, there are some bat species that can eat scorpions. So you have to be a pretty special predator to be able to get a scorpion. They're pretty tough-bodied, and they also have that sting.
Lila, age 9, wants to know, how big is he?
Hi, Lila. So he is probably about 6 inches long. He is full-grown at the age of 3 years old, so this is as big as they get. He can get a little bit bigger throughout his lifetime, but this is about as long as he'll get, and he weighs less than an ounce.
Robbie, age 7, wants to know, what's worse, poison or venom?
Ooh, that's a good question, Robbie. So there are versions of both that can kill you. There are versions that are the same kind of toxins, so like neurotoxins. They affect your brain and therefore all of your motor skills and how you move. And those can be delivered through venom or through poison. So I'd say they're pretty much evenly matched if they do the same thing. They're not a lot of fun.
Henley, age 5, wants to know, what does it eat?
So he eats crickets here. He can get also some mealworms and some superworms. In the wild, they might be eating some cockroaches, anything that's pretty much smaller than them. So even a small mouse or a lizard that got too close, he could probably take them down and have a little snack that way as well. These guys have a really cool ability to manipulate their prey. They can move around with those pinchers that they have. So they will actually take a cockroach and get underneath their shell to be able to sting them. So they're pretty advanced as predators.
Lily B wants to know, how long can they go without water?
So that's a little bit of a complicated question. We do provide them water, and we do give them moist substrate. So we make sure that the ground is wet in some areas of their enclosure because they actually have a special breathing apparatus called book lungs. So instead of lungs like us, their lungs are like the pages of a book. So they sway back and forth, and they need some moisture in there to be able to move back and forth. So he always has to have some sort of moisture, and he does come from really hot, humid areas, so he has to have a lot of moisture around him, but he doesn't necessarily drink it in the way that we think he would.
Emma, age 7, wants to know if scorpions lay eggs.
Ooh, that's a really good question. So a lot of invertebrates do lay eggs, and most arachnids lay eggs, but actually scorpions give live birth. So they have their babies inside of them. Emperor scorpions in particular will have them for about 9 to 18 months. They can actually pause the development of their babies inside of them if the world isn't too right. So if there's not enough food, they will pause the development of their babies inside of them. But after about 9 to 18 months, they will give live birth. So the little scorplings, as we call them, will crawl out. And those scorplings will actually crawl onto the mother's back, and they will all kind of coalesce. They'll all stick together on her back. And they will stay there for about a week on her back while they absorb the rest of their egg yolks. And then they will be able to molt. So they will all shed their skin collectively, and then they will go off and be their own little individual scorplings. But the mom will take care of them while they're on her back.
Tatum, age 7, wants to know, is he nocturnal?
Hi, Tatum. So he is nocturnal. He does prefer darkness when he's hunting. So we usually actually don't see him hunting when we feed him. He usually waits until we go home at night, and then we notice that there are no crickets left. So he does do a lot of things under the cover of night. And that's actually really important when it comes to their fluorescence, or their ability to glow. So a lot of bats and bird species can see that UV light color, that black light color that he has, and then he becomes prey for them at night. So he does have to make sure that he's not out in the sun too much, or that could make him glow even more under the moonlight. So he does have to hide during the day and at night. But he does come out to hunt at night because that's when he can see movement best.
Lily Grace, age 9, wants to know, how many species of scorpions?
Hi, Lily. So there are quite a few species of scorpions. I don't know the exact number. That's something I would have to look up. But there are probably around 200 to 300 different species. We have multiple species here in the United States. We actually have in Arizona the most venomous species in North America. So we have lots of different kinds of scorpions. The two that live here are not harmful to us, though. So they're actually really good to keep around because they will eat all of the cockroaches that are around your house.
Robbie, age 4, wants to know, how many eyes do they have?
Hi, Robbie. So she has 8 eyes, just like a tarantula would, or a spider. But her eyes don't have the exact same function that our eyes do. Her eyes are mostly just to see movement and light.
Lily, age 11, wants to know, how can you tell if it's a boy or a girl?
That's a good question. So there are 2 kind of ways that you can tell. One way is to look at those pinchers. Usually in the males, they're going to be a lot beefier and bigger because the males are fighting off other males to be able to get the female's attention. Another way is to look underneath them. They actually have a special organ called their pectines underneath them. And it kind of looks like a feather underneath them. And those are much larger in the males than in the females. And that's the best way to tell them apart.
Tatum, age 8, wants to know, how old do they live to be?
So they will be about 8 to 10 years in human care. We don't actually have enough data to know how long they live in the wild.
Abby Claire, 4 years old, wants to know, do they hibernate during the winter?
So they don't necessarily hibernate. They do go to a lower metabolic rate. So they won't eat as much, they won't come outside as much. They'll just kind of lay in a warm, quiet place for a little bit until their prey items come back out. Like we don't see a lot of bugs in the winter, so they have to wait until those bugs come back out and then they can come out again and expend energy again.
Duncan wants to know, what do you do when you see one?
That's a great question, Duncan. So if you see a scorpion and it's outside, you just make sure to give it its distance, but you can take a look at it and see how cool it is. Maybe see what it's up to. If it's inside of your house, you can do the same thing you would do to take a spider outside. So you can get a cup and slide a piece of paper underneath it and then take it outside. We really don't want to hurt these guys. They're really good to have around because they do keep down pest populations. I know a lot of people are really afraid of our eight-legged friends, but they do have a really important role in our environment, and they want nothing to do with us. We are huge predators to them, so it's really important that we show them some kindness.
Zoe, age 9, wants to know, do they travel in groups?
Ooh, I like that question, Zoe. So some species do travel in groups. Some believe kind of in the safety in numbers sort of method, but emperor scorpions do prefer to live alone for the most part. Sometimes they will live with their mate, though.
Frankie, age 9, wants to know, how fast can they run?
They can run pretty fast. So if there's a scorpion outside and it's in your path and you can't get around it, if you just stomp, they will zoom out of your way. They have to be really fast to be able to catch other bugs. Most bugs can move pretty quickly, especially cockroaches. If you've ever seen them inside of your house, they move really quickly. So these guys also have to be that fast to be able to catch up to them.
Ro, age 7, wants to know, how many eyes do they have? Can they smell? And do they have teeth?
That's a very good question, Ro. So they do have 8 eyes, and they do not have teeth. They instead have those pinchers and that sting, and then they can use that sting, and it kind of makes their prey into a liquid smoothie, and then they just kind of suck it up into their mouths. And then their sense of smell is a little bit different than our sense of smell. So these guys can actually smell through the hairs on their legs, which is really weird, right? So they actually can sense all of the chemicals in the air just using those hairs on their legs. So they don't have a nose like us, but they can definitely smell different things. A lot of scorpions actually like to play with flowers because they smell really nice.
Henley would like to know, where did they live other than the zoo?
Hi, Henley. So scorpions live pretty much all over the world. Emperor scorpions live in West Africa. But we do have a couple of species of scorpion here in Tennessee and all over the United States.
Aubrey, age 7, asks, are their teeth sharp?
That's a good question, Aubrey. So they don't have teeth, but they do kind of have ridged pinchers. So their pinchers kind of have little thorny spikes on them. So that's kind of what they use as their teeth. And those would be pretty sharp and a little bit painful to get pinched by.
Grady, age 10, wants to know, do they dig holes to get away from predators?
Ooh, I like that question, Grady. So they might dig holes, but that would probably take too long to get away from a predator. So they sometimes do have burrows that they can run into, that they live in, and then they go out of those to hunt, and if a predator were to come near them, they could run back into that burrow. But for the most part, they just try to find cover under anything they can if there's a predator coming.
Phoebe, age 8, wants to know, do they have ears?
Hi, Phoebe. So they do not have ears. He can feel all of the vibrations from sound, all of the sound waves, but he can't actually hear what we're saying. You can see that Caesar's just sitting here. He looks pretty relaxed. He's got his sting kind of curled up, so it's not outstretched or anything. And he's got his pedipalps or his pinchers just at a resting position, and that's how we know that he's actually really comfortable right now. So if you've never seen a relaxed scorpion, here's your chance.
Tatum, age 8, wants to know, how old do they live to be?
So Tatum, they can live to be about 8 to 10 years in human care, but outside of that, we don't really know. A lot of invertebrates actually don't have a lot of research done on them in the wild, so we don't know a whole lot about them. We don't even know how many are out there in the wild, so we're not quite sure how long they live, but the females do live longer so that they can have more babies.
Abby, age 10, are all scorpions black or are they other colors too?
Ooh, that's a good question, Abby. So they can come in multiple different colors. Emperor scorpions are usually this pretty dark black color, and that just helps them blend into their environment. But the scorpions that we have here are some light brown colors. Some of them have stripes on them. So it's really just depends on what kind of environment they're living in. That will tell you what their coloration would look like. But for the most part, there aren't any brightly colored scorpions other than when they're under the black light.
Caleb, age 4, wants to know, do they have hands?
Ooh, I like that question, Caleb. So he has those little pinchers, and then he also has his 8 legs, but he doesn't have hands. But he does use his pinchers a lot like hands. He can move his prey around, he can touch things and grab things with them. So that's what he uses to sense the world, but they're not hands like our hands.
Lexi, age 10, wants to know, are they friendly?
I like that question, Lexi. So they are not mean like a lot of people think that they are, but they aren't necessarily what I would call friendly. So they're used to mostly living alone, so anything new coming near them is going to be a little bit scary to them. But Caesar here has done a lot of work to get used to being around people, and he actually doesn't mind it when we interact with him anymore. It's actually kind of enriching and fun for him to come out and be able to see new things and do new things.
Anya, age 6, wants to know, what's her favorite food?
Hi, Anya. So my guess is Caesar's favorite food would be cockroaches. Every scorpion I've ever worked with just loves to dig into a cockroach.
Maddie, age 12, wants to know, do they shed?
Ooh, I like that question, Maddie. Yes, they do shed. So with arachnids, we call it molting. So they do molt their entire exoskeleton all at once. When they're younger, they do it about once every week. But when they're full grown, like Caesar, he only does it about once or twice a year. And they do that to grow. So if they're eating a lot when they're younger and they're growing a lot when they're younger, they're going to molt more. And then as they get to adulthood, they're not going to need to grow as much.
Hazel's mom wants to know if this is the cool scorpion that changes colors under the violet light at Creatures of the Night.
Hi, Hazel's mom. This is probably the one that you met, either Caesar or his brother Palpatine, because yes, they do fluoresce under UV light. They do turn a really cool green or blue bright color.
Sophia, age 12, asks, how dangerous are they?
Hi there, Sophia. So scorpions in general are not very dangerous. Emperor scorpions aren't really a big deal for humans. Their venom is going to just feel like a bee sting. Same thing with the 2 species of scorpion that live here in Tennessee. They don't really pose too much of a danger to humans. And it's actually a misconception that there are scorpions that will immediately kill humans after stinging them. There is the deathstalker scorpion, which has the most potent venom, but even that venom wouldn't kill a healthy, normal adult. And same thing with the most venomous species in North America. They're not really going to be able to kill a full-grown, healthy adult. It's just more really small children and people who are otherwise sick that would be concerning. But our scorpions that we have here in this state are really not a big issue to us.
Lily, age 11, wants to know how old can they live up to?
So they usually live about 10 years in human care. Again, we don't have a lot of research on how long they live outside of human care.
Juan, age 6, wants to know, do they have predators in the wild?
Hi, Juan. Yes, they do have predators in the wild. So depending on where they live, they're going to have different predators. Some species in Africa have to battle with bats who will try to eat them. Other places, birds will try and eat them, maybe some smaller mammals like a skunk or a weasel. All sorts of things can and will try to eat these guys, but they are pretty tough. They have a really hard exoskeleton, and you can actually hear it clunking together when Caesar walks, so they're pretty tough to beat.
And Seth, age 32, wants to know, how can something with pincers and a tail, unlike a spider, be an arachnid?
Hi, Seth. I really like that question. So arachnids are they're a group of invertebrates. They are under the phylum Arthropoda. So arthropods are classed into two different groups. There's chelicerates and there's mandibulates. So these guys here are chelicerates. So they all have some of the same characteristics. Scorpions and spiders share the same amount of legs, as well as the same mouth parts. So these guys have what's called chelicera, which are their chewing mouth parts. And they also have those pedipalps, or those pinchers. So spiders do have pedipalps, they're just not in the pincher shape. So there's a lot of different ways that they've adapted to looking, but they all have the same basic body plan. So I really like that question because a lot of people don't think that they are arachnids, but spiders are not the only arachnid out there. And actually, you may not know, but ticks and mites are also arachnids. So there are a couple of different types of animals that are still considered arachnids. Harvestmen are as well, even though they're not spiders either. Just trying to get you guys a good view of his whole body. He is quite a large animal, but a little bit hard to see through the glass. We're still working on doing some handling with him. He's a little bit newer to being handled, so we're doing some training so that he has the option to be handled if he wants to be.
Seth also wants to know, how many eyes do scorpions have?
Hi, Seth. So they do have 8 eyes, just like other arachnids usually do.
Sophia, age 12, wants to know, how long do they live?
So they will live to be about 8 to 10 years in our care, in human care. Otherwise, we don't know a lot of information about them in the wild. But it's probably significantly lower because that's the case with most animals. They usually live longer lives in human care because we are able to give them vet care and proper nutrition and safety from predators. You can see Caesar's just hanging out. He seems pretty relaxed right now. There's a chance that he probably fell asleep. He does fall asleep sometimes when he's really relaxed.
Robert wants to know, what is the most dangerous scorpion in our area?
There aren't very many dangerous scorpions over in this area. I don't know exactly, but in North America, they're the ones that are in Arizona, called the Arizona bark scorpion. And they can actually paralyze your limb if you get stung by them. But Caesar here, he's pretty friendly, he is not harmful to us, and he's a great ambassador for his species. So again, I encourage you to help out scorpions like him. in Africa by recycling your cell phones. And if you want to help out the scorpions in our area, you can make sure that you leave leaf litter out in your lawn and rake up in the spring instead of in the fall. And you can make sure that you're not killing them when you don't have to. They're really helpful to keep down all of the species of bug that we don't want in our house. So I want to thank you all so much for joining us today. Caesar obviously had a great time since he fell asleep. And I love talking to you guys. So have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for tuning in.